The story begins on a mysterious night, with a farmhouse standing quietly under a blanket of shadows. A single, radiant light cut through the darkness, casting an eerie glow over the land. This light, however, wasn't ordinary. It belonged to a mystical being. As dawn broke, the tranquility was shattered. The farmer discovered his once thriving fields in utter chaos, trampled and spoiled by unknown forces. Furious and desperate, he summoned his 3 sons, assigning them the task of protecting the farm. Among them, John, the youngest, was often labeled lazy, though his kind heart made him an easy target for his elder brothers. Exploiting his good nature, they pushed the responsibility of guarding the farm entirely onto him. Determined to prove himself, John prepared to stand watch alone. That night, as the wind howled and the farm lay silent, a strange, unsettling voice caught John's attention. He spun around to find an enormous white horse standing behind him, its shimmering coat glowing faintly in the moonlight. The sight left him speechless. Gathering his courage, John quickly fashioned a rope and tried to catch the horse. The horse bolted, dragging John along with it. Refusing to let go, John held on as the beast charged forward, the two locked in a strange, wild dance. Eventually, the horse lost its balance and stumbled into a swamp. Instead of taking advantage of the situation, John helped the horse escape the murky trap. As the creature climbed out, John noticed tears in its large, expressive eyes. A pang of guilt struck him. Moved by its sorrow, he promised never to trouble it again. To his astonishment, the horse nodded as if understanding his words, then galloped away. When John returned home, a faint noise from the farm once again drew his attention. Upon investigating, he was shocked to find 2 magnificent horses chained near the barn. Before he could process what he was seeing, a disembodied voice informed him that these horses were a gift. Turning around, John spotted a smaller horse, a foal, standing nearby. The foal introduced itself as the child of the horse John had saved. "My mother is deeply grateful for your kindness," the foal explained. Touched by the gesture, John couldn't help but smile. Just then, John heard his father's voice calling out. Panicking, he rushed to keep his father outside, ensuring he wouldn't see the horses. Once his father left, John climbed onto the foal's back out of curiosity. To his amazement, the foal dashed forward with incredible speed. Letting out a sharp whistle, the foal summoned the 2 larger horses from the barn. Realizing their extraordinary value, John decided to sell the horses at the market. Their beauty stunned everyone, drawing a crowd of eager buyers. Among them was an older man, who the foal suggested would be the best buyer. However, John had grander plans. He wished to present the horses to the king. When the king arrived, he was captivated by their splendor, but his skeptical minister voiced concerns, suspecting the horses might be stolen. The king cunningly seizes John's 2 magnificent horses without paying a single coin. When John dares to ask about the promised payment, the king simply ignores him and departs without a word. Frustrated and dejected, John returns to Foal, who scolds him sharply, saying, "I told you to sell the horses to that old man. You never listen." Seeing John's sadness, Foal lets out a piercing whistle, summoning the horses back to their rightful owner. Meanwhile, the king, unaware of their return, finds his royal carriage in disarray. The horses, now gone, have caused his carriage to tip over into a flour sack, leaving the once proud king in a ragged and humiliating state. Embarrassed but unable to show his anger publicly, the king grudgingly offers to buy the horses. This time, John demands a hefty price, leaving the king and his advisors no choice but to pay. The king's aides, however, suggest an alternative, employing John in the royal court. They warn the king that allowing John to remain independent might lead to further insults. Begrudgingly, John accepts the offer and begins working under the king. Not long after, the king's devious assistant hatches a plan to trap John. He proposes that John be tasked with capturing a phoenix, a mythical firebird known for its blazing feathers and dangerous nature. "It's an impossible task," the assistant assures the king. "No one who has gone after the phoenix has ever returned alive." The king, delighted by the idea, agrees, seeing this as an opportunity to rid himself of John while appearing fair. When the task is presented to John, he agrees without hesitation, despite the apparent risk. Foal, however, is deeply concerned. "This is no ordinary task," he warns. "The phoenix is a deadly creature. Many have tried to capture it, but none have survived. Even so, John remains resolute, determined to complete the challenge. Seeing his bravery, Foal decides to assist him. Leading John into the heart of a dense, ancient forest, Foal shares his knowledge about the phoenix. The phoenix feeds on a rare type of nut called the dream nut, he explains. These nuts have a unique property. When eaten, they can put the bird into a deep sleep. Foal helps John gather a handful of these special nuts. He then reveals the phoenix's secret dwelling, an underground lair hidden deep beneath the forest floor. We'll scatter the nuts here, Foal instructs, pointing to a clearing. When the bird catches their scent, it will surface to eat them. That's when we'll strike. Together, they carefully prepare the trap, scattering the dream nuts in just the right spots. Then, they hide and wait, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Soon enough, the ground trembles slightly, and a brilliant light begins to emerge from beneath the earth. The phoenix, drawn by the enticing aroma, rises majestically, its fiery feathers illuminating the dark forest. John and Foal watch in awe as the bird begins to feast on the nuts. As predicted, the magical nuts take effect, and the phoenix slowly succumbs to sleep. With great care, they capture the bird and ensure its safety, preparing to return it to the king. The firebird eagerly devoured the nuts, and moments later, it collapsed into a deep slumber. Seeing this as his chance, John moved cautiously to capture the magnificent creature. But just as he reached out, the bird stirred, its fiery eyes snapping open. With a deafening screech, it rose to its feet, flames licking at its wings, and began chasing John and Foal. As the bird's fiery rage spread, the entire island was set ablaze, its inferno consuming everything in its path. Amid the chaos, the firebird seized both John and Foal in its powerful claws. Struggling to escape, John remembered the last nut he had kept as a backup. With quick thinking, he hurled it directly in front of the bird. Drawn by its irresistible scent, the firebird paused and devoured the nut. Within moments, the magical nut worked its charm, and the mighty bird fainted once more, releasing John and Foal. By the time morning broke, the firebird awoke to find itself chained by John's clever trap. As John approached, he noticed tears streaming down the bird's eyes, glowing like molten gold. A wave of guilt and compassion washed over him. How could he cage such a majestic creature? Without hesitation, John freed the firebird, watching as it spread its magnificent wings and soared into the sky, its flames trailing like ribbons of light. Before leaving, the firebird turned back, a gesture of gratitude in its piercing gaze. It plucked one of its radiant, heat-glowing feathers and dropped it gently before John. Foal, though impressed, warned John, "The king will never forgive you for letting the firebird go." But John was optimistic. Holding the feather, he said, "This will prove we captured it. The king will have no choice but to believe us." When John presented the feather to the king, the ruler's eyes narrowed with suspicion. The feather had lost its glow, appearing dull and lifeless. Dismissing John's claims, the king furiously declared him a liar and ordered his execution. As the guards led John to the execution site, the air suddenly crackled with heat. A deafening screech filled the sky, and the firebird appeared, descending in a blaze of glory. Its presence stunned everyone, leaving no room for doubt about John's story. Overwhelmed by the spectacle, the king grudgingly withdrew the death sentence. To save face, the king publicly praised John for his bravery and even promoted him, though inside, his anger boiled. Humiliated and seething, the king turned to his trusted minister for a new scheme. After careful thought, the minister proposed a cunning plan. "Send John to fetch the mountain princess," he suggested. "The task is nearly impossible. If he fails, he'll face certain doom. And if he succeeds, the princess will still be a valuable addition to your kingdom." Pleased with the idea, the king set his plan into motion, summoning John for this perilous new mission. The minister's clever suggestion to marry the mountain princess appealed greatly to the king. Seeing the opportunity to benefit either way, the king wasted no time and dispatched John on the perilous mission. After a treacherous journey, John finally reached the towering Sar Mountains, where the princess was said to reside. As he approached the castle perched atop the icy peak, he realized that the only way in was blocked by a thick wall of solid ice. It seemed impenetrable, and John's efforts to break through proved futile. Just as despair began to set in, the firebird's glowing feather suddenly appeared, its radiant heat causing the ice wall to crack and collapse. The breaking ice unleashed a torrential flood of icy water, sweeping through the mountain slopes. Foal, caught in the rushing currents, was carried away like a rolling snowball, tumbling down the mountainside. Despite the chaos, John pressed forward and entered the castle. Inside, he found a grand hall filled with an uncanny sight. A multitude of young women, all sound asleep, their faces serene and unmoving. It was a daunting challenge to identify the true princess among them. But when a firebird feather floated gently down and landed near one of the girls, John instinctively knew she was the one. As John gazed upon the princess, he was struck by her extraordinary beauty, leaving him momentarily speechless. Regaining his composure, he respectfully informed her of the king's wish to marry her. The princess, however, was unimpressed. "If your king is as mighty as he claims," she said with a defiant smile, "he should have come himself to seek my hand." Before John could respond, the princess made a bold move. She leapt from the mountain's edge. Without a second thought for his own safety, John jumped after her, determined not to let her go. In their moment of peril, Foal reappeared, catching both of them on his sturdy back and carrying them safely to the ground below. As they traveled back, Foal couldn't help but notice John's growing admiration for the princess. "You're falling for her," Foal remarked with concern. "If the king discovers this, it'll spell trouble for you." Unbeknownst to them, the princess had been secretly listening to their conversation. A faint smile graced her lips as she realized she might be developing feelings for John as well. When they returned to the palace, everyone marveled at the princess's beauty. Even the king was captivated, but his joy turned sour when he saw John alive and well. Despite his inner rage, his advisors urged him to see the situation as a triumph. They praised John's success and proposed further rewards, much to the king's displeasure. John, however, was restless. Concerned for the princess's well-being, he sneaked into her chambers late at night to speak with her. But before he could say anything, the king's guards arrived and took the princess away to present her before the king. The king wasted no time and proposed marriage to the princess. She, however, set a condition. "I will marry you only if you can prove your worth by passing the challenge I set for you." The princess set a seemingly impossible condition. She would marry only if the king could retrieve her grandmother's lost ring, which had been lost to the depths of the sea long ago. Hearing this, the king grew anxious, fearing the task might be beyond his reach. At that moment, John arrived, only to face the king's wrath. Frustrated and desperate, the king shot an arrow at John, though it narrowly missed him. Turning to Foal for guidance, John asked about the ring. Foal admitted he didn't know but promised to find out. Foal reached out to his mother, who revealed that the ring was hidden deep within the belly of a whale. She explained that the whale could often be found near a small island in the vast sea. Determined, John and Foal set out on their journey. As they neared the island, disaster struck. A flock of large, aggressive birds collided with them, causing John to fall. To his surprise, he landed directly on the massive whale itself, which was chained and trapped beneath the sea's surface. As John explored the area, he saw enormous iron chains binding the whale, restricting its movement. When he approached the creature, it spoke, revealing its sorrowful tale. "I swallowed some ships by mistake while navigating the sea," the whale admitted, "and now the sailors have imprisoned me as punishment." The whale expressed a deep desire to atone for its mistakes. Moved by the whale's plight, John devised a plan. He believed that if he could make the whale sneeze, it might expel everything trapped inside, including the lost ships, and perhaps the ring. Acting on his idea, John bravely entered the whale's nose and began tickling it. After several attempts, the massive creature let out a powerful sneeze, expelling a torrent of ships, debris, and water. As the last remnants of the whale's burden were released, it thanked John for his kindness and swam away, free at last. Watching the whale disappear into the ocean, John felt a pang of sadness, realizing he had not yet recovered the ring. Just then, a small crab emerged from the water, holding a glimmering object in its claws. "The whale sent this for you," the crab explained. "It knows the sincerity of your heart and wanted you to have this." To John's relief, the object was the lost ring. Triumphant, John and Foal returned to the palace. As John presented the ring to the princess, her eyes lit up with admiration. She realized in that moment that John's determination and courage knew no bounds. "You would do anything for me," she whispered, her heart beginning to soften toward him. Meanwhile, the king's men had grown suspicious of Foal. One of them spied on him through a magnifying lens and overheard the talking horse. Alarmed, he declared Foal a devil and warned the king. This revelation prompted the king and his guards to act. They gathered in secret, planning to capture Foal, who was now seen as a threat to the kingdom. As the king stirred from his chambers, the tension thickened. Would John and Foal be able to escape this new danger? And what would become of the budding bond between John and the princess? As the king spotted Foal near the princess's window, he raised his bow and shot at the loyal horse. Despite John's desperate efforts to save him, the arrow struck, leaving Foal injured. Grief and frustration consumed John as he found himself powerless in that moment. To make matters worse, the king publicly declared John a traitor and labeled him the princess's kidnapper. Stripped of his position, John was sentenced to death, with the execution scheduled for a few days later. Meanwhile, the princess managed to sneak away to meet Foal, who was recovering from his wound. She confessed tearfully, blaming herself for the trouble they were in. In an attempt to avoid marrying the king, she had given him a peculiar challenge. She told the king that to regain his youth, he must bathe in 3 magical pots. The first pot would contain boiling water, the second ice-cold water, and the third scalding milk. The king, suspicious of the princess's intentions, hesitated. His advisor suggested they test the process on John first, framing it as a second chance for his life. The princess, distraught by this turn of events, shared her plan with Foal. If we place my grandmother's ring in the first pot, the firebird's feather in the second, and the mystical life and death flowers in the third, John might survive this ordeal, she explained. Curious about the flowers, Foal asked where they could be found. The princess revealed that they grew only at the farthest edge of the world, in a place few dared to venture. It would take a long time, Foal remarked, worried about his injury. Not with your speed, the princess reassured him. Determined to save John, Foal set off despite his weakened state, racing against time to find the elusive flowers. By dawn, the pots were prepared. The king, eager to display his generosity, invited an audience to witness the spectacle. He announced that this would be John's second chance. If John survived the trial, he would be pardoned. The moment arrived. John was pushed into the first pot, and as the boiling water engulfed him, the princess discreetly slipped her grandmother's ring into the pot. A faint glow emanated, protecting John from harm. When it came time for the second pot, the firebird's feather, hidden within, began to shimmer, enveloping John in a radiant aura. His body grew stronger and more resilient as he emerged. Finally, John is lowered into the third and most dangerous pot, filled with scalding milk. The princess, watching with bated breath, anxiously waits for Foal to return. Elsewhere, Foal reaches the mystical flower at the edge of the world. As he prepares to pluck it, he discovers a dire truth. Whoever picks the bloom will sacrifice their own life. Despite the risk, Foal's loyalty to John drives him to act, and he pulls the flower free. Back at the castle, the spectators begin to mourn, believing John has perished in the third pot. Their sorrow is palpable as they start to leave the scene. At that very moment, Foal bursts onto the scene, injured but determined. With his last ounce of strength, he throws the life and death flower into the pot. The liquid shimmers with a golden glow, and moments later, John emerges from the pot, transformed. He now stands tall, regal, and princely, radiating an aura of strength and nobility. Overcome with envy, the king, desperate to gain eternal youth, hurls himself into the first pot without a second thought. However, instead of rejuvenating, he becomes trapped in a glowing bubble. The bubble rises into the air and carries the king far away, leaving everyone stunned. Cheers erupt as the people rejoice in John's miraculous transformation. They declare him their new king and crown him on the spot. With the kingdom celebrating, John and the princess embark on a quest to find Foal, fearing for his life. Foal, believing the flower's curse will claim him, prepares for his end. However, the princess gently reassures him, revealing that the flower's magic was merely a test of his courage and loyalty. In the final scene, we witness a grand celebration. John and the princess are wed in a joyous ceremony, their love symbolizing the triumph of bravery and selflessness. Foal, fully recovered, stands proudly by their side as the kingdom celebrates a new era of hope and prosperity. The movie concludes with the couple riding into the horizon, Foal galloping alongside them, signifying a bond that will endure forever. With this, the movie ends. If you liked this video, then do not forget to subscribe to the channel after liking the video.